Weapons of mass destruction program in Iraq. No evidence, no threat. Weapons of mass destruction is viewed by society as being high explosive destructive bombs. A weapons of mass destruction program in Iraq was suspected in the early 90s by the United States and the United Nations. This concern would lead to inspections by the United Nations because the UN and the US feared that Iraq would use these weapons of mass destruction to destroy masses. What are weapons of mass destruction, and what are the potential hazards? Weapons of mass destruction consist of biological, chemical, and nuclear-created weapons that are designated to kill masses. For some leaders and terrorists, they only want to use weapons of mass destruction to kill and annihilate as many people as they can. But, as does the United States, most countries have weapons of mass destruction for homeland security and protection of their people. Are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq a threat to the United States and other nations? A weapons of mass destruction program in Iraq should not be seen as a threat to the United States or any other country, because Iraq has yet to use them previously unless they were attacked, and therefore one can infer that they use their weapons to protect their homeland and protect their people. The most powerful weapons of mass destruction are nuclear weapons, and nuclear weapons, as stated in Goldstein's text, are the world's most destructive weapons. Quote, "A single nuclear weapon the size of a refrigerator can destroy a big city." End quote. It would be very hard for any nation to defend against nuclear weapons with this intensity, because the only way a nuclear bomb can be destroyed is by using another bomb which creates more destruction. Also in the Goldstein text, it says that there are two types of nuclear weapons, which are fission and fusion. Whereas a fission weapon is an atomic bomb, and a fusion weapon is a hydrogen bomb, which is more expensive than an atomic bomb or a fission weapon. Both of these types are very deadly no matter how one looks at it. Nuclear bombs are very destructive. There are two other types of weapons of mass destruction that consist of chemical and biological weapons. Quote, "A chemical weapon releases chemicals that disable and kill people." End quote. There are several examples of chemical weapons, such as tear gases, which can be irritating, and nerve gases, which are more lethal. Quote, "Different chemicals interfere with the nervous system, the blood, breathing, or other body functions. They can be absorbed in through the skin or by inhaling. Whereas if one has a gas mask, it can disable one from inhaling such chemicals." End quote. Biological weapons are somewhat like chemical weapons, but they use, quote, "microorganisms or biologically derived toxins." End quote. An example of biological weapon would be anthrax. The United States had a terrorist scare a few years ago with anthrax, and it was very deadly in the post office throughout the country. All nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons are very detrimental to society and can be very deadly to anyone. Any type of weapon of mass destruction can be used to destroy masses, but it's only a threat if they use them. The only way Iraq would launch a nuclear, biological, or chemical force against any nation is to protect their homeland, because Saddam Hussein once said, quote, "He who launches an aggression against Iraq or the Arab nation will now find someone to repel him. If we can strike him down with a stone, we will. With a missile, we will. And with all the missiles, bombs, and other means at our disposal." End quote. Therefore, one can infer that Iraq would only launch forces if forces are launched against them. Quote, "Iraq used weapons of mass destruction against Allied forces back in the early 90s that led to the United States seeking removal of Saddam Hussein from power." End quote. This shows that Iraq only used weapons of mass destruction in a war such as the Gulf War. In 1991, the United States believed that Hussein would use chemical weapons in Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. The U.S. thought they would leak some type of chemical gas out so that everyone would inhale it and eventually die from it. It was believed that Iraq had the best biological weapons force in foreign lands. Iraq was inspected through the 90s, ending in 1998. And they had chemical weapons, and they were investing in biological weapons also. It was suggested by previous President George W. Bush that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and that is the reason the United States declared war on Iraq. But it has been many years now, and neither the U.S. nor the United Nations have found any weapons of mass destruction program in Iraq. It has cost the United States too much money and too many lives due to faulty suspicions of a weapons of mass destruction program. Iraq had an advanced nuclear weapons development program before the Gulf War that focused on building an implosion-type weapon using highly enriched uranium. Quote, "Baghdad, which is the capital of Iraq, was attempting a variety of uranium enrichment techniques, the most successful of which were the electromagnetic isotopes separation and gas centrifuge programs, end quote. As Richardson stated, quote, Iraq was indicted on an alleged acquiring of uranium from Africa, end quote. The United States and the United Nations have worked together inspecting Iraq for weapons of mass destruction, and their outcome is currently still negative. These negative results are very good support for my thesis because after all inspections, discovery of weapons of mass destruction program in Iraq have yet to be found. Let's be realistic. Saddam Hussein, the captured leader of Iraq, said in so many words, quote, if another country throws anything as little as a rock, his country would throw a rock back. Any nation would retaliate if another country launches any type of aggression toward them. That's the main reason the weapon of mass destruction program in Iraq is not and would not be a threat to any other country because it's just good preparation as any other nation would do. Preparation always leads to success. The United States prepared for anything, therefore Iraq would be very prepared if they had a weapon of mass destruction program and if another country launched aggression toward them. But through it all, the United States would have lived by George Washington's farewell address. To stay out of foreign affairs, then the United States would not be worried about who has weapons of mass destruction and what their purpose for having them is. A weapons of mass destruction program in Iraq is not a threat. Never was, never will be. No evidence, no threat.